Okay, welcome, Petter.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you today. So I will just kick it off then. So this presentation is about creating inclusion in play, and it's the inclusion and the play part that are the keys here. Today we will start by just focusing on these words. You can't play with us. I think many of you, like myself, have heard these words from someone on a playground or in some other context. Some of you might also have said it to someone else. And these are, of course, words that hurt. And we will come back to how we can sort of work with this concept and sort of turn it into something better. This is me. I'm Petter, and my pronoun is he. I love to dance, eat good food, and I have been working at Toca Boca for slightly over 5 years now as a play designer. And that means I get to design and create play as my job. And while talking about inclusion, I, of course, want to highlight that I am absolutely a white cis man today, and that is also part of why I want to do this, to take this occasion to talk about the inclusion efforts we do, while of course acknowledging a bunch of privileges that I have. But that is something we all need to do and should not be a burden to just people who are discriminated against. So I work at Toca Boca, which is an app studio in Stockholm that has been around for 10 years or 9.5 years now. And to kick it off with us, I just want to show you a little reel about what we do.
Toca Boca.
So for 10 years, we have been making apps. We were known to make apps, paid apps, as in they were not free. Instead, you paid once and then you could play forever. We have now moved to more of a freemium model with, it's actually all of the latest 2 apps we've made. You can download and try for yourself if you haven't tried any of our stuff before. So in the core, we believe in the power of play, and that means open play for everyone, and play that is free and from limiting rules. Of course, we make games, and games are based on systems that have rules, but in the actual type of play you can engage with in our apps, it's free play that is very open and with a lot of possibilities. And that is play that empowers and makes small and big humans grow. And it's also worth noticing that the right to play is even in the UN Convention of Rights of the Child. So our products are also designed from the kids' perspective first in mind. And we can never forget that we are creating our products, who we are creating the products for, and why we're doing it. Because when we start doing the wrong things, the kids will tell us, which is really good. So as I mentioned, we make apps And by making like the products we make in Unity, of course, they are games. It is game development. But we are calling it digital toys or digital playgrounds. And the point of us wanting to sort of be in a slightly different space than just saying we make games for kids is because there is something really powerful about the toys that you have in the real world. So with Lego, as an example, they are amazing in the way that you are always free to do whatever you want with a piece of Lego. You can build with it, you can create storytelling with it, or like just playing with dolls. And it's that type of experience when we craft digital toys that we want to give to the users. The power to feel that they can do whatever they want, and it's the kids that should be in control. And while there are other games that are similar to this, like creative mode in Minecraft as an example, there is still not in abundance, and especially not that are targeted toward kids that often are very like railroaded in and controlled, which is a big difference towards how kids play. If you just look out and see how kids play in a playground or at home, it is often rules are very quickly fluctuating and things can happen rapidly, which is how they want to do it. And in games instead, there is a big feeling of loss of control because they cannot control how they play. So the playground that I'm involved in making is an app called Toca Life World, where kids are in control of the world and their play, and they play there every day in places like school, office, homes, hospitals, stables, or an amusement park. But while we build all these environments, the most fun thing is usually just like playing with food and the toilets, like in the real world, maybe. So on a more serious note, I want to kick off the next part with showing you a video. So this is a 10-year-old girl called Emma, and she's from Texas in the United States, and she is receiving a gift from her parents.
Dear Emma's. You gotta be kidding me. No. Show it to us. It's got a leg like me. Do you love her? I love you.
So what Emma says here is, it's got a leg like me. So Emma has a prosthetic leg, and the parents have sent this doll to a company called Step Ahead Prosthetics. We are not at all involved in this. And then this company made a prosthetic leg for her doll. And as you could see in the video, this affected Emma very strongly because she could finally see herself in a toy. And this is why representation matters. It's so important to be able to see yourself in the media you consume and in the toys or whatever you play with, to see not only people that are looking at you, but also other people who show that they are also part of this world. And on another note on diversity, a little history lesson. There's a researcher called Elizabeth Sweet. She looked at the Sears catalog, which is this big American warehouse, or not warehouse, like company that sells a lot of things. She went back and looked at their catalogs, the Sears catalogs from the 20th century. She looked at more than 7,000 catalogs, and then she saw that in these toy parts, mainly, there were gendered advertising in about 50% of the ads. So which means like toys that are clearly for girls or in their mind was sort of like presented as like a toy for girl. That would be gendered advertising. Like a stereotype would be girls playing with dolls and boys with guns, maybe. So that was 50% of all the ads in the 1950s. And then in the 1970s, that number was down to 30%. So it was like this more like positive, like everything doesn't have to be gendered when it's not really a point of doing it. Really good, I think. And now, instead of continuing to go down in the gender advertising, we are back to the numbers of mid-century. Like more and more advertising is gendered. And probably the reason for this is the marketing in the 80s that had this constructed this perfected formula of TV shows that pushed out plastic toys, and then the idea that a gendered product sells better. But these preferences is something the market creates. It's a social construction. When we talk about games, it's a super interesting example that you should read up on if you don't know about it already, why games are much more prevalent towards males, and this idea of the female gamer not existing. And this is purely, and biggest reason for this is because games were put in the boy aisles, in the boy departments or parts of the toy stores, and then socially constructed as something that belonged to the male audience and not the female, which is crazy, and we're still living with the legacy of that. So when we talk about things for kids, the concept of the toy store becomes really, really important. So that is something that is called the pink and blue aisles. So in the blue aisles, you have the toys for boys, action and cars and stuff, and then dolls and baby stuff for girls in the aka pink aisles. So this is the state of the world when Toca Boca started 10 years ago. So what was really, really interesting for us was that in the app stores, in the Apple app stores or Google app stores, there was no kids. There was only a kids section. There wasn't a boys or girls section that you had to put your stuff in. And so this meant we could just make toys, digital toys for anyone. And doesn't matter who you are. If you are interested in the type of play that this app provides, then go ahead and play with it. So that meant we could start this company by making gender-neutral apps in the digital space. So coming back to these words, like being welcoming or not welcoming with the play you're doing, but essentially also with the product you're making. Like if we want to create playful and open digital spaces that empowers kids, it also then needs to feel available for them. So we come to this point about what you create will always have an impact. So as a designer of anything, it might be a painting or it's a game or it's a TV show, you as a designer always have choices. Who are you including and who are you excluding? And either you care about that whatever you do has an impact. The product you're making will always have an impact, big or small. Or you can just put your head in the sand and not think about it. It doesn't mean that you always have to like do all the things, but you should always be aware of what you do will have an impact on anyone who is seeing the media that you produce. So I have always felt like it's crazy. We have millions of kids playing with our apps every month. So then I also feel like our responsibility also then just grows. And I really felt we have to like care about what we do. And I felt we needed to do more. So we had worked with gender neutrality for many years, but then our current CEO, Björn Jeffrey, coined this phrase, no kid should ever feel excluded by Toca Boca. So that has been sort of the motto of going forward and pushing in new areas where we maybe aren't doing that well and trying to do better. So you might not all be at these giant companies today where you have like money and resources to do big improvements. But I still want to share 3 ways to work with inclusion that can work both in small and bigger ways. So yeah, and these are 3 things we are doing right now at Toca Boca. So the first one is define diversity, and these definitions were something that was sent out to you, and I know in the Discord you can also find the material I will show you now, even more in more detail than just these slides. So what we felt was we really wanted to work with inclusion and diversity, but it's hard to do it if you don't know exactly what you will be doing. It's easy to say like, oh, we work with diversity, we have thought about skin tones, but it can be so much more. And for us, and for the example that you get in your materials, it's also about thinking about what are the most important things for your product, maybe for your target audience, or maybe for what you personally want to highlight, and then maybe go towards these things and make them really good in your app. So yeah, it's all about empowering people by respecting and appreciating what makes them different. So these are 7 things. I won't go to example about all of them, but these are the 7 main things we look at when we create either new marketing material or a new app, as an example. So one thing is physical characteristics, and this is examples from Toca Life World. All human characters have a variation of skin color, hair color, and hair types. So this one might be the most simple. One thing I like to highlight here is that it's easy to forget about hair types while remembering hair color and skin tones. Hair type is also really good to sort of put in that mix and think about. Functional variety or functional diversity. So in this example, we include different variations or different abilities and disabilities in the character lineups. Some things are tied to the characters we design. Some things are more like a wheelchair. You can put any character in the wheelchair if that is something you want in your play, or if you want to represent yourself or your father or something who is in a wheelchair. Family structure. I think this is a typical example of an aspect that is maybe even more important if you're working towards kids. So the whole idea of family structure is to represent different types of family structures and not only the nuclear family. So this could mean representing grandparent families, single parent families, and multicultural families. And just making these families seen. I know many Swedes know about Alfons Åberg, or Alfie Atkins, as it's called in English, which is a book for kids. And it wasn't until I was like 2 years ago, I don't know, they really thought about that. That whole story is presented that the mom is not existing in this family, or I don't remember if she's dead or she's just gone, or if that's never explained. But the whole story is about this one kid and his dad. And for kids, for me, that wasn't the case for me. I had 2 parents growing up. That didn't never occur to me. But I think for a kid who grows up with only one parent, that is really important. And it's so nice to have this type of representation. And like, it didn't affect the story that they were telling for me, but for someone else, maybe it made a huge difference. Got me teared up here by thinking of this myself, but nice. So then we have age, and this is basically when we talk about ageism, and maybe that like we in the Western world at least, or mainly celebrate the people who are like 20, 30, 40 years old. That's the age range where, and you are able to do anything, and that's what's important. Then it can be interesting to give both younger people and older people in your stories agency. So for me, that means a lot. As an example, like an old person can be in your story, and it doesn't only have to be a person sitting on a porch in a rock, like on a chair and just being grandma. It can have a job or be able. Gender, super interesting. Here it's a lot about breaking stereotypes on what gender is doing what, thinking about gender as a scale, including non-binary characters, etc. There's a lot you can do here, and I think gender is not easy, but it's there is several ways to just get into gender and mainly not thinking of it as in binaries. aka only males and females exist. There is, of course, you can be more masculine and more feminine, but it can be much more varied than that. Yeah, in many ways. So, as an example here, another example in Toca Boca world is when you create an avatar in this game, which you can do if you want to, you don't have to. Gender is never an option. Instead, kids themselves, when they play, they will assign the character a gender if it's important for them. Just by picking a dress and long hair, they will reflect on the character as being female, changing to a shirt and short hair, maybe, and a beard, assuming that it now is a male character. And the point of this whole thing is with picking gender, it's like it's not really needed. Another really cool example of this, if you dig it more down in details, is how the Sims have done it, where you can do preferences like on a very detailed level, like does this character stand up or sit down when it pees? And then multiple more examples, but at least like if you want to, you can really dig into it. But the point is here is like the gender is only the gender you want it to have, and it doesn't have to be a checkbox. I think that it's harder if you don't have money, but if you're in a big corporation, you should definitely do this. It's to pay experts to cover your knowledge gaps. So we have something called the Diversity Advisory Board, and this is 5 individuals, mainly based in US, but one in Sweden and one in UK, that helps us with different challenges we have. So we basically email them a question, and then they answer us back if we think something might be problematic, and they gave us really good ideas on what and why, and they all have different areas where they are experts in. The main point here is that often people who care about inclusion far too often get asked to work for free. Like, oh, you have dark skin, can you vet my app? And maybe if they're a friend of yours, maybe they can. But if you want people to work with your products, pay them money if you have the money. Otherwise, maybe, I don't know, trade favors. Yeah, and what we use this group for anything, for feedback from anything from products as apps to marketing material. And when we do this, it's the discussion and outcome that sort of leads us forward and becomes more and more rewarding as we continue to work with this, because it's sort of, you always build on this expertise, and it's always good to get external eyes on what you're creating. And I think you all know this when if you are creating games and have someone else playtest your game, but as well as sort of like, if someone looks at your thing and it's like, this looks super racist, maybe just don't like hush that away and like, no, it doesn't, because I have played this for a long time and I don't feel that. But when you have an outsider view looking at what you are doing, they don't have the full context of what everything you have been thinking and maybe the process you've been through. And sometimes they actually do see stuff that you don't notice because you're so in it. And that's why just external eyes are so good. I think the most important thing of this is to create a positive team culture, and this doesn't really cost money. So I think you should do this as soon as you're like in a team, or maybe just keep a positive team culture in the teams or classes you are in today. One thing here that I think is like just a good starting point is that we are constant diversity learners. So this is all about being humble about the work, because it is hard. I think it's really hard, and it's also not something we accomplish overnight. For us, the vision of not excluding any kids in our products is this big challenge for the studio, and it has not been easy. We have done wrong steps and tried and fixed things again, but we're always learning together. And we know that it's something that just has barely get started. It is always room for improvement, and we can always learn more. Secondly, tied very much into this is that we don't address every aspect in every product. Our goal is to have an overall diverse portfolio, but we of course look for opportunities where we can address any of these aspects and be norm creative. And then finally on this, always assume good intentions about your colleagues, peers, friends, whatever, because nobody is perfect. And especially in, I don't know, like it's different in different industries, but in the gaming industry, it's very common to work with people from different backgrounds, different parts of Europe or the rest of the world. And that means you come with a luggage of different ways to talk about gender or sexism or race. As an example, if you're not Swedish, it's super tricky to talk about the race in Sweden, because sometime in the 40s, 50s, we said we're not going to talk about race because it doesn't exist, because that was something that the Nazis did. And that then it today becomes really problematic, because race definitely exists and racism definitely exists, and that is stuff we need to talk about, which is completely different if you look at UK or US, where it's not without racism, but they have words for these things. And the point of this with the good intentions is that if someone with different background or what, and for any reason says something that you strongly disagree with, or just become angry with what someone says, you shouldn't go to like a private Discord message or a secret chat somewhere and just backtalk that person and just say, oh, Petter is an asshole, he said this super racist thing. You should be able to have a work culture where you can address that. And you can say like, hey, you said this thing, I interpret this as this, is this what you mean? And then that usually leads both to an open climate, but also a much better way to talk about these things. So instead of assuming that someone is an asshole, assume everyone in the project wants the project to be great and also wants the best for everyone. And maybe that's not always the case, but usually at a company it is that people are there and want to create the good same things. And if not, then you just have to align and see where that can lead you. But in most cases, people are not saying things to be evil, and just address that and have a climate where you can talk. So the three hot topics here was defining diversity for your product, for what you need to do for your target audience, or for what you want to do and want to address. Because the diversity aspects I brought up, they're just examples. There are much, much more things you can work with. Second thing is pay experts to cover your knowledge gaps. And the third was create a positive team culture. And as a quick thing, if you want to work with stuff for children, there's both a group and a really good guide that is called Designing for Children's Rights. So these guidelines are made up for people from all kinds of professions, game designers, psychologists, etc. But the only thing they have in common is that they care about design for children. And all of the guidelines are based on the UN Convention of Rights for the Child, and they're made in cooperation with UNICEF. So there has been 2 yearly meetups. Next year in January, there will be an online meetup. So if you're at all interested in this, check out childrensdesignguide.org. And then there's also a really good Slack group. So if you're at all interested in designing for children in any way, like check this out because it's really good stuff. So for us, the goal in the Toca Life series is for kids to be able to see themselves and play themselves and their friends and family in the app, but also see people and other things that are maybe not part of their everyday. And if you do this, you get amazing feedback back. So this kid writes to us here. He talks about that he has this muscular dystrophy syndrome. And just by us having a kid in the app that has a prosthetic leg makes this kid feel like we see him. And when you get to this point of actually getting the feedback back from the users from something you've done, it is worth it like 1 million times over. So as a final thing, we want to empower kids through play. But to do that, we need to make sure they are included. And I just want to gonna end with one of our fans telling about what she does when she is given that power of being able to do whatever she wants.
And Toca Boca is a good game for people because they're free to do anything they want to do, but really can't do in real life.
Like what?
Like steal stuff.
That's not good.
So I hope you all go out and steal stuff. Yeah, is it a good time for me now to just talk about the assignment?
Yes, that would be perfect. Thank you so much. Sure.
I will just go ahead and do that. So for the assignment, and I know that you have like not a lot of time, so think about that in your scope. But I want you to try to design a game that can be played by kids 6 to 9 years old. And in this, the requirements is that it should be played on tablets or mobile phones. And tablets, of course, like iPad, etc., whatever that can be. It should have one or more characters or avatars that you have or interact with or play with. It should be easy to play. And I also, as a challenge, want you to include some diversity aspects. It can be some of the ones I mentioned here. It can be some of the ones in the material you saw, or that were in a Google Drive folder shared to you. But my takeaway with the last point is I don't want you to make a game that is about diversity aspects. I don't want you to make a game where the diversity aspects is the core. I want you to just try to design a game for kids and then see if you can apply some diversity aspect, one or more, on top, and see how that feels. That's it.
Great. Okay, thank you, Petter. Me and Björn has divided you guys into groups that we're going to post in the chat here in Google Meets. And